Hi, this is Ryan. This is Disruptarian Radio, November 21st, 2019. And some good conversations have come out of a video that was recently posted by Big Island Video News. This one is about how the Hawaiian County Council delays accepting $10 million for Mauna Kea access road cost, November 19th, 2019. So this is about the Mauna Kea access road and the law enforcement expenses up there. The state's giving the county $10 million to compensate, so local taxpayers don't have to pay for that, which I think is great. My thought was, and this was 67 comments ago, so there's been a big conversation about this, as you can see here, but my comment was they'd spend a lot less when they simply and lawfully clear the road. Now, people contested their jurisdiction up there. They said, no, only beneficiaries own the road up there. So when they talk about beneficiaries, they're neglecting what the Constitution, what the Emissions Act, and what the HCC Act says. All three of these points of government and points of law, all the way back to 1920, say that it's for Native Hawaiians and the general public. So the general public, meaning me and everybody else, is included in these lands. These are public lands. And so the only difference is that sometimes a Native Hawaiian with blood quantum of 50% or higher can get a lease to lease the land and use it for whatever productive purpose. But that does not mean they're owners. That does not mean just because they're mentioned in the law that they are the owners. The owners are DHHL, which is a state organization and a state agency. So the government owns the land, and taxpayers pay for the budget of DHHL as well as the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. My tax dollars go, in fact, if you're in the United States, your tax dollars go to those groups because they take both funds out of the general fund of the federal government and they take general funds out of the state government. So everybody who pays taxes into these general funds, you and me and everybody else in the United States, pays for these government programs, DHHL and OHA. So when DOT, the AG's office, and DHHL, they came out August 30th, 2019, with a joint statement on the jurisdiction of Mauna Kea Access Road, saying that first, Hawaii County had a memorandum of agreement with DHHL, Department of Hawaiian Homelands. So the owner, DHHL, gave Hawaii County jurisdiction up there to manage the road. So they paid for the road, they maintained the road and everything else out of my tax dollars as a county resident and then state resident now because DOT controls the road now after they made it a state highway. So as you can see here, there's a lot of information. I'll put a link in the description about this, but the owner, DHHL, now says DOT has jurisdiction up there to maintain the road, meaning that state police do have jurisdiction up there, which is what the protesters are saying is not true. So they're not owners if they're leasees. Just because their name or just because their race or their ethnicity is mentioned in the HCC Act, the Admissions Act, and the Article 12, Section 4 of the Constitution, does not mean that they're owners, even if they're leasees. It means that they can get a lease based on their ethnicity, but that these lands, as you can see in all three of these laws and these acts of the state, say that it's for the public use, for the general public, meaning me, meaning everybody. So Native Hawaiians and the general public is how it's worded. So they, just because the state used those lands for roads doesn't mean that only everybody except for the Native Hawaiians got to use them. The Native Hawaiians use those roads too. The Mauna Kea access road to go to the summit, Native Hawaiians use that road. They don't have to pay for it directly because it comes out of the general fund, but they use it. Anyway, so we'll go into a little bit more of this. So this person says, Disruptarian Radio, TMT has some felon supporters too. This was about David Tsai having felonies and using his version of history to scam people. He scammed Native Hawaiians out of their money, saying that he could get them out of their mortgage when they were upside down in their mortgage. They were desperate, they had financial problems, and they trusted him to nullify their mortgage. He never did. He took their money and gave them nothing. And so my reply was to this AP person, now they may or may not be using their real name, but I would suspect they're not using their real name and they are anonymous, like 90% of these people commenting about this on social media. I said, I find that about as relevant as Tulsi Gabbard having a strong KKK supporter also support her. David Duke supports Tulsi Gabbard, and Tulsi Gabbard supports the racist beliefs of the protesters. I mean, the KKK fights for racial privileges. The protesters are fighting for racial privileges. So maybe the connection between David Duke and Tulsi Gabbard is more relevant than some drug dealer supporting the TMT. The point is, though, that you cannot pick your supporters. And then this person said, just because you moved here doesn't mean you can try and change things and school us with your fake history from Ken Conklin. My reply is, I have been a stakeholder in all of this for much longer than before I moved here. And I have spent a lot of time and money in Hawaii over the last couple of decades. So I am not just brand new here. But as a federal taxpayer, my tax dollars have gone to OHA and DHHL for many, many decades of my life. Now, as a state taxpayer, my state tax dollars go to OHA and DHHL. So my interest in these organizations and these laws have doubled since I moved here. Mauna Kea Access Road is maintained by the State General Fund, also which I pay into. Astronomy is sacred to me, so that is also a vested interest that I have in this struggle. So what might be sacred to me may not be sacred to you, and vice versa, but, astronomy is very sacred to me. I have, planets tattooed on my body from 27 years ago when I first started getting tattoos, when I was still a teenager. So, astronomy is very sacred to me, and it goes farther back than this protest, by far. And I said, as far as Ken Conklin, you are making a point definitely worth addressing. Ken Conklin is a PhD with 3 master's degrees. He is fluent in the Hawaiian language. He has taught Hawaiian studies at the University of Hawaii as well. When people contest to me, quote, you can't have an opinion on this, you don't have a PhD like David Tsai does. They're always quoting David Tsai because he has a PhD, right? So I said, well, Ken Conklin does, and he has plenty of credentials in this field of study. You should read a few of his books on this. And then I said, the difference between Ken Conklin and David Tsai, and the reason to bring up David Tsai's record, is that Ken Conklin isn't using his education and knowledge of this history to rip people off. David Tsai is ripping people off, and that is why he has been convicted of 1 felony and is facing a 2nd felony now. Both for the same reasons, ripping off Native Hawaiians, promising them that if they quit paying their mortgage, that he's going to get them out of their mortgage. And they get out of their mortgage, but they also get foreclosed on and lose their house. And so instead of doing what he says he's going to do, it does what they feared was going to happen without his help. And he gives them nothing in exchange for $1,500. So anyway, I say he used this fake and distorted cherry-picked history to convince Native Hawaiians that they could get out of their mortgages. The saddest part is they were already hurting financially when he lifted $1,500 from them using this fake history. If David Tsai would have presented the full details, such as the letters of recognition from all of the treaty partners of the Hawaiian Kingdom, which these partners sent to the Republic of Hawaii recognizing that the Republic of Hawaii, as the legitimate successor of the Hawaiian Kingdom, or if he would talk about the Morgan Report in his presentations, or if he would talk about the white supremacist reasons that James Blunt opposed annexation, it may have given these homeowners pause in believing that David Tsai could help them get out of their mortgage. He duped them by only giving them half of the story. Now he is doing the same to other Hawaiians. So I have my opinion, and in my videos, I always tell people to do their own research. I am also a stakeholder, and I am very much entitled to my opinion. If David Tsai's story can hold any weight on its own, and if my side of the story is incorrect, then there's nothing to worry about. And I said, people need to know about, 1, the letters of recognition. Easy to find. They're in the state archive. And they've been posted online. That's why I mentioned Ken Conklin, because he's the one that pulled them out of the state archive. But anybody can do it. Nobody needs Ken Conklin to pull these out of the state archive. They're still there. They're still accessible. People can still go see them in the state archive. 2, the white supremacist reasons that the Southern Democrat and spokesman for white supremacy, James Blunt, had for rejecting annexation. Now, James Blunt filed the Blunt Report with Grover Cleveland. Grover Cleveland believed his report and was going to reinstate the monarchy in Hawaii, thinking that the United States government had some sort of interaction with this, like they were responsible for the overthrow. And when the Morgan Report was done, it proved that James Blunt was lying. And it's very important because James Blunt took all of his testimonies in secret. He didn't use anybody's testimony on oath, like he didn't take an oath, or he didn't have the witnesses take an oath to give their testimony, so they could lie and not have any consequences, or he could lie about their testimony and not have any consequences, which is what was found. And then he didn't have any of these witnesses cross-examined. Now, when John Morgan went, he took all of his testimonies with an oath. So if somebody lied, they could go to prison for a felony, which is perjury. So, if they said, an asteroid came out of the sky and, crushed the queen, or, if they made some big lie up or something and it was found out they were lying, that would be considered perjury and they would go to jail. So, whatever the lie might be, but if they lied, they would go to jail. So he took all of the testimony with an oath, unlike James Blunt. All of the witnesses that could make it to D.C. were cross-examined by both sides of Congress, the Democrats and the Republicans. I think there were 3 on each side of the cross-examination. And the ones that couldn't come to D.C. sent notarized sworn testimony to D.C. And so somebody else witnessed their testimony, which was the reason for the notary. And it was sworn by a local law enforcement agent, so that if they lied, it was perjury. And then, all of the testimony was that James Blunt incorrectly represented their testimonies, that he lied about what they said, that the U.S. was not involved with the overthrow. The U.S. came because they had ships in Honolulu with a treaty they had with Hawaii. They already had established that with the Hawaiian Kingdom to have ships in Pearl Harbor. And when the overthrow happened, a message was sent out to John Stevens saying, hey, there could be unrest, there could be rioting, there could be death. Would you send troops over to monitor? Kind of like the UN, Like the UN will do that, like in Somalia, when they're having a civil war, or when they're having an uprising in some of these African countries, or even in like Bosnia or places like that. The UN will come in and moderate, and if there's an aggressive force killing people or robbing people or whatever, the UN will step in and separate the two. And that's what the U.S. did with their ship when they came in with like only 166 soldiers, which, the Queen's Army was far bigger than that. They had Gatling guns and everything else. And, I think there was 600 soldiers at the Queen's disposal immediately. And there were other people that were ready if they needed them. And the only force that came from the U.S. side was 166 Marines that didn't do anything. They didn't harm anybody. They didn't threaten anybody. They didn't detain anybody. They just sat there and watched. That's all they did, and that's what's been proven. And that's what also was proven in the Morgan report, is that James Blunt lied about what happened. And so all I'm saying is that if you want the full story, get the other half of it. Because even in the Apology Act, or the Apology Resolution in 1993, there's a statement in there that said the truth is somewhere between the Blunt report and the Morgan report. And it's true, but the Blunt report was proven to be absolutely fake. That's why Grover Cleveland backed off and didn't reinstate the monarchy, is because James Blunt lied, clearly, and it was proven by his own witnesses told Congress under sworn oath that James Blunt lied about their testimony. Morgan's report was not proven to be incorrect at all, at any time, ever. So between the Blunt report and the Morgan report, I believe the Morgan report. So you can see that at www.morganreport.org. So this was a healthy conversation. And you don't have to believe me. I'm not some PhD. I'm not some scholar. I'm just somebody who opened the books and read the history. So believe me or not, doesn't matter. Research it for yourself. That's all I'm saying.